Greetings gentlemen, welcome back to another Naruto fanfiction video. Today's video is what if Naruto got sent to prison by Hiruzen and went insane part 5. Before the video starts, hit that like button and subscribe so I can continue making these videos. Click that bell icon so you never miss a future video. Without further ado, enjoy the video as always. The next morning when they woke, they were all surprised at what they found Naruto doing in the kitchen with Tsunami. Like when they had been traveling, Naruto had been hunting while they slept. But whereas before he had caught a few rabbits and a deer, last night he had caught what seemed like the entire forest that surrounded the area. The room was full of dead rabbits, about 20 different birds and 5 deer. The two were in the middle of skinning and plucking the carcasses and cutting up the meat. None of them knew what to make of it. They all just assumed that when they got here he would stop hunting. When he saw them all just stood there staring, his grin grew. What? Stepping forward, Kurenai explained their confusion. Naruto, why did you go hunting? I could understand when we were traveling, but why now? He just started laughing. Ha ha ha. Gato has a strong hold on the whole island. Tsunami here hasn't been able to shop for decent food for a while, and now that we are all here she didn't have enough food. So I went hunting. Again, none of them knew what to say to this. It had never occurred to them that Tsunami couldn't shop the food. Tazuna was nearly in tears at what the blonde had done. For the next hour they all sat and helped, except Kakashi and Inari. While they were doing this, Kurenai thought about the plan. She realized it was not a good idea to leave any of the genin unsupervised. So as they were working, she told them all her changes. They would still be in teams of 2, but she would go to the bridge with Tazuna's guard, while Kakashi would supervise the training. The other thing was that Kakashi would need to stay within hearing distance of the house in case anything happened. They all agreed, and the Jonin told them the teams for the foreseeable future and what they would do first. Killer with Shino would be the first to guard the bridge with Kurenai. Sakura and Hinata would be the first to train with Kakashi, and Sasuke along with Naruto would look after Tsunami and Inari. About an hour before they set off for their respective assignments, Tsunami asked if it was okay for her to go into the village to try and find any vegetables that she might be able to buy. After considering it for a moment, Kurenai agreed that Naruto could go while Sasuke stayed to watch the house and Inari. This did not sit well with the Uchiha, but he just nodded his head and agreed. An hour later, Tazuna and his guard for the next 2 days set off for the bridge, while Kakashi took Sakura and Hinata just inside the woods for their training. The 3 stayed in the kitchen to finish as Inari sulked in a corner of the room. When they were done with the animals, Naruto took all the organs that they couldn't use outside and dumped them in a circle around the house. No one asked for this, and I know it's a bad idea to handle like 5 books at once, but I honestly don't care. 3. I'm afraid someone's gonna take my idea, so basically this is. Watching him, Tsunami asked what he was doing. Feeding my friends. I met a small pack of wolves when I was hunting and made a deal. I spread out some food for them and they will help guard the house. Nice bunch. After they tried to kill me, they were very sorry. You can talk to wolves. Wait, did you say they tried to kill you? I can communicate with most animals. With my bloodline to change my body, all I have to do is alter my vocal cords and a few parts of my brain. Simple. What's a bloodline? Something that only I can do. And the trying to kill you part? Naruto just shrugged and started doing backflips until he hit a tree. Out giggling as he stood up, Naruto went back into the house. See what we meant last night when we said he was insane? Looking behind her, Tsunami saw Sasuke a few paces away. Not saying anything, she turned to head back to the house with a worried look on her face. Naruto and Tsunami were walking down the road towards the village. They hadn't really talked much since the whole wolf conversation. She just didn't know what to say to the young boy. Over the last few years she had seen a lot of things, like men and women killing themselves and their families just so they wouldn't suffer. or on the rare occasions that Gato and his men returned one of the women they took and they came back as empty shells. But Naruto was different. He had this aura around him. At first she had mistaken it for happiness, but after she talked to the other ninjas she realized that it was his insanity. Whatever made him like this, it was so bad that you could practically see it. It made her sad to look at him. He seemed like such a nice boy, a little, okay, a lot strange, but still nice. He was walking a little way in front of her, hands folded behind his head. A few minuets later they were entering the town. A lot of people had lost their homes over the last few years because of Gato. Many of the houses were falling apart, or in some cases already fell down. The streets were full of people, both young and old, and if you looked carefully you could see some of them were dead. Tsunami tried not to look around at the people lying in the street. Naruto on the other hand looked at everything with a smile on his face. After wandering around for a while they finally found a stand that had some only slightly out-of-date products. It was then that Naruto said something that shocked her. "This reminds me of when I was little, rotten food at high prices, the smell of hopelessness in the air, or that might actually be that guy over there. I think he's starting to go out of date too." Tsunami didn't know what to say to this. Konoha was supposed to be the nicest place to live in all of the elemental nations. How could this remind him of his childhood? Before she could ask him what he meant, Naruto had walked away. It was on their way out of the village that Naruto noticed a building that stood out from the rest. Unlike those around it, this building was not in disrepair. It wasn't very good to look at, but it was in one piece, had a fairly new paint job and a front door, which was more than could be said for most. "Hey, Tsunami-san, what's in there?" Following his line of sight, her face took on a mixture of hatred and fear. "That's one of Gato's buildings. He made it for his thugs. It's when they take the women they find in the village that they take a shine to." And she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Then she saw a strange look on Naruto's face. It was like he was struggling to keep his grin. Without saying anything he started towards the building, leaving her where she stood as the people around then all watching on silently as he crossed the street towards the building. When he came to the door, Naruto picked up his left foot and slammed it into the closed door, which flew off its hinges, and walked inside. The inside was nothing but a big room with sofas and beds. To one side of the room there were several women chained naked to a wall of all ages. The oldest looked to be in her late 30s and the youngest being around his own age. Even though it was the middle of the day, the room was full of Gato's thugs, about 50, all with a woman. The air reeked of sex and fear. It was almost enough to make the young boy gag. After the thugs got over their shock, they started to get up and surround Naruto. When they had him covered on all sides, a very large, very fat man stepped forward. "You've got a death wish or something." His words were slightly blurred. He was obviously drunk. It was then that the thugs saw something that hadn't been seen in 5 years. Naruto stopped grinning. The air in the room seemed to get colder and all the thugs took a step back. He didn't say anything, just stood there, looking around the room with cold, calculating eyes. When nothing happened, the thugs started to get their confidence back. The fat man from before walked up to Naruto, but because of the young boy's height he was only a few inches taller than the boy. "Maybe yous didn't hears me. I said, yous got a death wish." He never finished. As soon as the man had gotten close, Naruto had thrust his hand forward and through the man's stomach. He was still alive, but in a lot of pain. All the thugs in the room were shocked. Leaning forwards, Naruto put his mouth next to the man's ear and said loud enough for all of them to hear, "You have no idea." Without saying another word, Naruto gave a sharp pull and ripped out a long white object from the man's body. The man gave one last shuddering breath, and then fell over, and Naruto's hand for all to see was what was left of the man's spine, and yet Naruto didn't show any reaction. His face stayed impassive the whole time, until he dropped it. It was like someone had thrown a switch in his head. Slowly a smile grew in his face, and then it turned into a grin. They could hear the giggles in his throat as they became full-blown laughter. Then he started to change. Outside a small crowd had gathered, but they couldn't see inside because none of them dared to get closer. Tsunami, turning around to see who called her Tsunami, saw her father running to her side. Kurenai, Kiba and Shino right behind. "Dad, what the hell's going on?" One of the villagers came to the bridge screaming about something happening. "It's Naruto. I don't know what happened. 1 minute he was here and then he was kicking the door down." At the mention of Naruto, Kurenai pushed Tazuna out of the way and grabbed Tsunami by the shoulders, her eyes wide. "What is in that building?" With a shaking voice Tsunami told her what she told Naruto. Kurenai's eyes widened even more in understanding. Then they heard the laughter, followed by the screams of terror. Shit, it was like every other time he changed. The pain, the feeling of every cell in his body screaming in agony. Oh, how he loved it. As the men watched, Naruto started to get thinner and taller, but his body stayed the same size. His arms and legs seemed to be stretching. His clothes melded into his skin and turned into a patchy brown, cloth-like material. His eyes changed into big, round, black buttons that looked like they had been sewn onto his face. Lastly, his mouth sewed itself together into a malicious grin that stretched across his whole face. When he was done changing, he towered over all the thugs at about 11 foot. His arms as long as he was tall and trailed along the floor. The only way any of them could describe him was a giant ragdoll. They could still hear him giggling, although it was muffled by his lips being sewn together. No one in the room moved until the doll reached behind its back and showed them all the black, serrated scythes it now held. When it moved, it was like watching a puppet show. Its limbs were boneless, turning its head a full 360 feet to look at each of them. The dam broke and all the thugs threw themselves at their weapons. What happened next was a mass of flying limbs and blood. The ragdoll seemed to be just that, a ragdoll. It could bend in any way it wanted, twisting and bending around the thugs as they tried desperately to kill it. It never stopped giggling the whole time they fought, and with each swing of its arms another thug would fall with limbs missing. But none of them were dead. Before long there was only one thug left standing. He was nothing special, brown hair and eyes that were filled with fear. The doll was covered in blood from all the other thugs that lay around them. He was frozen to the spot as the doll made its way over to him on wobbly legs. But it didn't even turn to him. It walked over to the girls chained to the wall. They shrank away from it in fear as it reached out, only to cut their chains with its scythes. One by one the doll cut the girls free and watched as they ran out the door with all the others. The thug saw his chance when it had its back to him and ran forward and stabbed it in the lower back with his knife. The ragdoll made no sign that it could feel the knife. Slowly it started to lean back. It leaned so far that its head was in front of the thug upside down. Falling back on his ass, the thug tried to crawl away but stopped when the doll's mouth started to force its way open. "Tell Gato, I'm coming for him." Its voice was rough, like dry leaves rustling together. The thug just nodded quickly and ran out the door in a panic. Standing back up straight, the doll looked around at the men lying on the floor groaning in pain. Seeing them suffer brought another giggle to the doll's throat. Naruto turning its head again, the doll saw a crowd gathering outside the building. Stood at the front was Kurenai, Shino and Kiba, along with Tazuna and Tsunami. Turning the rest of its body to face the group, the doll slowly made its way over and stopped a few feet away, its head tilted to one side as it stared at Kurenai with its button eyes. "Can you still understand me?" Nodding its head slowly at her, Kurenai let out a sigh of relief. "Good, now I need you to cancel your shift." "Okay," she spoke slowly, making sure each word was clear. It nodded its head, but before it changed back to Naruto it turned to the thugs in the room, forcing its mouth open again. But this time, instead of speaking, it blew out a thick, black ash with embers floating in it. Kurenai could feel the heat coming from the ash from where she stood in the doorway as it filled the room. They could all hear the screams of the thugs as they were burned alive by the heat, then nothing. Turning back to the crowd, the doll made its way towards them and out the door. The crowd all backed up when they saw it walking towards them. When it was out of the building, they could all clearly see the thick layer of blood that coated its body. Slowly it started to turn back into Naruto. All the people stared at the boy in shock. Like the doll, he was covered in blood from head to toe and had almost the exact same grin on his face. "I regret nothing." With those 3 words he fell face first into the road. When Naruto woke up, he found that he was in a small room, the same one that they kept Kakashi in when he had fainted. Getting up, he found that he was in a clean white shirt and black pants. He still had his bandages on, thankfully, but he still wondered where his clothes were. Heading downstairs, he found all the Konoha ninja along with Tazuna and Tsunami, who was holding his freshly cleaned clothes. Taking the clothes from the woman with a nod, he went back up to change. When he came down a few minutes later, they all just stared at him. Looking at each in turn, he said, "One fine day in the middle of the night, 2 dead men got up to fight. Back to back they faced each other, raised their swords and shot each other. They all face planted." After getting back up, Kakashi spoke. "Naruto, what you did was reckless. You could have been killed." Naruto just laughed at this. I wish the room went deadly quiet at his words, until Tsunami asked, "What do you mean you wish? Don't you even care if you live or die?" No, tears filled her eyes when he said this. "So how long was I out?" Kurenai was the one to answer this time. 2 hours. "Why did you do it?" They all turned to Tsunami again. They all knew what she meant by it. Turning to face her, Naruto got one of his rare real smiles. "Some people need to die. What they were doing was wrong. I hate people like them." Turning to face the genin, Naruto continued, "It's like I said, the things I hate are never around for long." After saying this, his grin came back. Nodding to himself, Naruto headed for the door. "Where are you going, Roof?" Without another word, he left the room, and just like the night before, a few minutes later they heard him playing his violin. Getting up, Tsunami wiped her eyes and turned to Kakashi and Kurenai. "I don't know what happened to make him like this, but I think I have an idea. Did you know that people say that Konoha is the best place to live in the elemental nations? If that was true, then why when we were walking around town did he say that it reminded him of when he was young?" Everyone in the room was shocked at this, except Kakashi and Kurenai. Both Jonin looked away, unable to meet her eye. "That's what I thought. I saw your face today, Kurenai-san. When I said Naruto had gone into that place, I saw the fear in your eyes. I don't know how things work in a ninja village, but whatever you did to him, well, I hope you are all ashamed of whatever it was, because that boy has done more for this village than anyone since my husband died." It was then that Kakashi looked up at Tsunami. His eye was so full of regret that it made her gasp. You have no idea, hardly anyone spoke to each other the next morning. None of them really knew what to say. Naruto and Tsunami were talking in the kitchen about different ways to cook the meat he had caught. The older woman was going out of her way to learn as much about the boy as possible. She didn't ask about his past, not wanting to bring it up in case it scared him off. "So Naruto, how do you know so much about hunting?" "It's what I do at Konoha for food." Tsunami stopped washing the dishes to look at Naruto when he said this. "What do you mean?" All the others in the room looked at him from the corner of their eyes, waiting for an explanation. "I live in a forest. Nice place. No one goes there because of the fence." Shortly after that, Kurenai and Kakashi took their temporary teams and they were left alone in the house. After what had happened the day before, Kurenai decided that it would be best for them not to leave, which everyone but Naruto agreed with. At some point, through unspoken agreement, Naruto was put with Tsunami while Sasuke would guard Inari. Sasuke didn't have a problem with this because Inari never left his room. For the entire morning, Tsunami would ask Naruto questions. Sometimes she would get answers, other time nothing. One thing she did notice was that when he explained something, he got very serious. There was the occasional mad moment, like when he started juggling knives badly, but she soon got used to it. If there was one thing Tsunami learned, it was that Naruto was smarter than he looked. The way he explained things in such detail, it was amazing. But there was no denying he was insane. Sometimes she would hear him talk to himself under his breath, or he would just start laughing at nothing. At one point she could have sworn that she saw him cut himself on the arm with a knife out of the corner of her eye. But when she turned to look at him fully, there was no sign of there ever being one. It was the afternoon when Tsunami finally asked him about the day before. She wasn't planning on bringing it up, but something had been bothering her. "Naruto, can I ask you something about yesterday?" Seeing him nod, she continued. "What was that thing you became? I've never heard of a ninja doing something like that. It looked like something out of a nightmare." Turning to face her completely, he grinned. That's exactly what it was. Seeing that she didn't understand, Naruto just laughed and went on. "Remember when I said I had a bloodline, something that only I can do? Well, that was it. I can become anything. The only limitations are my chakra and my imagination, that and a high healing factor. The thing you saw yesterday, that ragdoll, was from one of my nightmares. After the Wizarding War, everything was good and calm, until it wasn't. The Muggles found out and destroyed the entire planet. Follow Harry Potter as he goes back in time." Tsunami was shocked. To be able to do something like that was incredible. Why use a nightmare? Why not an animal or something like that? "I use my nightmares as inspiration. I let my enemies feel true fear before I kill them." Tsunami really didn't know what to say to that. "Can I see?" Nodding his head, Naruto lifted up his hand. Slowly, the bandages melted into his flesh and were replaced by thick, wiry black fur. His fingers stretched and his hand grew to about the size of his head. Thick claws grew at the ends of his fingers, curved at the tips into hooks. When it stopped, Naruto's hand was completely changed into an animalistic claw. Tsunami just stared at it for a long moment. She didn't actually see him change the day before and was fascinated. Reaching out her hand, she stopped just centimeters from touching it. "May I?" Again he just nodded his head, never taking his eyes off her face. Closing the distance between their hands, she was slightly surprised by how soft it was. It felt just like a dog's coat. The claws were razor sharp, perfect for tearing flesh from bone. The whole time she was looking at her hand, Naruto was watching how she would react. "Does it hurt?" He grinned insanely at her question. "It is the second most painful thing I have ever felt." With that, he pulled his hand back and started to walk away to do a perimeter check, his hand changing back to normal as he went. Before he left, Tsunami asked one more question. "What was the first?" He just laughed and went outside. They were all at the table for dinner. Naruto made it and had used the meat from several different animals to make something he called game stew. When hearing it was Naruto's recipe, the others were a little scared. At first Izuna refused to eat it until Tsunami threatened to force it down his throat. He could still remember the burning in his throat from the hangover cure. No one but Naruto and Tsunami were eating. They all just stared at the bowl of lumpy liquid in front of them. Seeing that they weren't eating, Naruto put his spoon down and looked at all of them. "Eat or I'll dye all your hair different colors while you sleep." They grabbed their spoons and swallowed a mouthful before they could think it through. All their eyes widened at the taste. It was good. The meat was tender and melted in the mouth. The seasoning was perfect and the broth was delicious. Seeing their reactions, Naruto laughed and started eating again. None of them spoke as they ate. Even Inari seemed to be enjoying the meal. When they were all finished, they all stared at Naruto before Kurenai asked where he learned to cook like that. "Trial and error. First time I tried cooking, I couldn't shit for a week." Nodding their heads weakly, they all went to the sitting room while Tsunami washed the dishes, except Inri, who went to his room. A few minutes later, Naruto pulled out a small orange book from his back pocket and started flipping through the pages at a fast pace. When he didn't stop, Sakura asked what he was doing. Without taking his eyes away from the book, he said in a flat tone. Reading the Pinkett was confused when he said this. But you're just flipping through the pages. He didn't respond to this and kept flipping. It was then that Kakashi noticed the title of the book and his eyes widened. Naruto, where did you get that book? Your bag? Oh, this was so not good. Turning to Kurenai, Kakashi shrank back in fear. She was staring at him with fury in her eyes and a dark aura surrounding her. But before she could kill him for corrupting her students, Naruto got up from his chair and went over to Kakashi, book in hand. For a moment Kakashi thought he would be like any healthy man and get down on his knees and cry tears of joy. What he didn't expect was for Naruto to slam it down on his head so hard he saw stars. If I catch you reading this again, I'll strip you naked, hog-tie you, write pervert on your chest and throw you into a kunoichi-only bathhouse. Understand? To emphasize his point, Naruto kicked the one-eyed Jonin between the legs, causing all the other males in the room to wince. Kakashi's eyes went wide and he let out a high-pitched scream as he curled into a ball. Nodding his head in satisfaction, Naruto went to the door and left. When he was gone, Sasuke walked over to his sensei to make sure he was okay. Turning to Kurenai, Shino asked, "What exactly is in that book?" Shaking her head and looking down at Kakashi, Kurenai wondered if it would be overkill to kick him herself. "Something that if any woman sees you reading, they will kick your ass. Though I am glad Naruto seems immune to the rotten thing." Nodding their heads, Killua, Shino and Sasuke backed away from Kurenai. The next day found Kakashi, Sasuke and Naruto at the edge of the forest that surrounded Tsuna's house. Today they would be training. The girls would be with Tsuna and Killua and Shino would guard the house. Turning to face the two boys, Kakashi told them what they would be doing. "Okay, since Naruto agreed to teach Sasuke his fighting style, I thought we could work on that." Nodding his head, Naruto gave Kakashi a piece of paper. "What's this? A list of things I need to start teaching him." Shrugging his shoulders, Kakashi skimmed over the list. Naruto, why do you need a rope, a rotten fish and a bucket?" Naruto just grinned and made his way towards a tree. 10 minutes later, Sasuke was starting to regret asking for the blonde's help. He was currently hanging upside down with his arms and legs tied so he couldn't untie himself and a rotten fish tied to his head. He could feel the blood rushing to his head and was starting to feel ill from the smell of the fish. Walking up to the Uchiha, Naruto looked over all the knots and placed the bucket under his head. Kakashi was off to one side watching with a critical eye. "Okay, everything seems to be good. Now we can start." Grabbing Sasuke's arm, Naruto started to walk around, slowly spinning him until the rope wouldn't turn anymore. Having enough of the blonde making a fool out of him, Sasuke yelled, "How the hell is this supposed to teach me to fight, you fucking asshole? Calm down, duck ass. You want my help or not? I'm not sure anymore." When he said this, Naruto smacked him in the back of the head. "Shut up. Now the reason we are doing this is because you need to get so dizzy you puke." This made Sasuke's eyes widen in sudden fear. He looked at the rope and then at the bucket underneath him. "What the hell? My style is all about spinning to build up momentum and use that to increase your attack and defense. The drawback to this is that it makes you dizzy when you stop. So, I'm going to start with building up your tolerance to motion sickness. Then why do I have a rotten fish on my head? I made a bet with Shino that I could get you to smell like a rotten fish, but that's not important now. And remember to aim for the bucket." Before Sasuke could yell at him again, Naruto let go of his arm and he started to spin. As soon as he let go, Naruto darted away and stood behind a tree. Kakashi, seeing what he was doing, asked why. Naruto just grinned at him and pointed to the screaming Sasuke. As he turned, Kakashi was hit in the face with Sasuke's puke. "Ah, that's why." When he turned back to the insane blonde who was rolling on the ground laughing. "Ha ha ha, he got you, ha 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 ha." When Naruto had calmed down and Kakashi had cleaned himself off with a low-level water jutsu, the two turned back to Sasuke. He was very pale and his eyes were unfocused, but as soon as he was back to normal, Naruto did it again before he could speak. This continued for the next 3 hours straight until Sasuke stopped puking and was able to yell at Naruto while he was still spinning. The bucket was full and the surrounding area now had several puddles of sick. Kakashi had learned his lesson the first time and was able to avoid being splattered again. Finally satisfied that Sasuke was used to spinning at high speeds, Naruto went and cut him down with a kunai he had gotten from Kakashi. What he forgot to do, however, was move the bucket. As soon as he cut the rope, Sasuke fell face first into the bucket, which caused Naruto to fall on the ground and laugh yet again. When Sasuke got up and couldn't get the bucket of his head, Naruto started having trouble breathing. After a few minutes, Kakashi took pity on his student and pulled the bucket off. The young Uchiha just stared daggers at the blonde rolling around on the ground at his expense. It took a full 10 minutes for Naruto to calm down and he still couldn't help the odd giggle here and there. Right, now that you got used to spinning, I think I should explain more about my style. Like I said earlier, it requires you to spin to build up momentum but makes you dizzy when you stop, which is why I spun you around for the last 3 hours. It is because of this I named it the drunken spinner style. Okay. Now there are 2 ways to counteract this style. One is to spin faster than your opponent to build up more momentum, and the other is to spin at the same speed but in the opposite direction from your opponent. With me so far? When they both nodded, he went on. They had all sat down during the explanation. Kakashi because he knew it would be long, and Sasuke because he was still a little shaky on his feet. Now the longer you are able to spin, the longer you can fight using this style, but if you use it continually for too long, it will take a while for you to get over the dizziness. There are 3 forms to my style. The first is all about attack, the second is all about defense, and the third is about subduing the enemy. Again they nodded. Now the way I used it on the Demon Brothers was the third form. It is a more advanced form that requires great kenjutsu skill to ensure you only break the first layer of skin. I will not be teaching you this form. At this, Sasuke shot to his feet in anger and yelled, "What? Why not? It wouldn't suit your style." This calmed Sasuke down instantly. This Naruto he could stand to be around, calculating and serious. If he said this, he would have a valid reason. Nodding his head for the blonde to continue, Sasuke sat back down on the ground to listen. The way you fight is all about power. You use your strength and jutsu to overpower your opponents as quickly as possible. Is that a bad thing? No. Actually, it is perfect for a ninja. Kill quickly and efficiently, in and out. But I made the third variation as a way to prolong the fight, causing the most amount of pain but not killing them. In essence, it is a capture technique. Sasuke thought about what Naruto said for a moment before nodding his head. I see what you mean, but then what are you going to teach me? The first. Actually, I'm going to teach you a bit of the first and the second. You never know when you will need it, just in case. This time it was Kakashi to nod his head in agreement. He's right. Knowing both will only help you in the long run. You can still focus on one, but even if you only know the basics of the other, it might mean the difference between life and death later on. By the way, I will only teach you the basics and mechanics of the style. This time Sasuke kept his calm. Why? Because if I show you the basics, you can build it up and make it your own. The drunken spinner is a loose style. It's all about quick, flowing movements, and if I show you all the ways I use it, it might not be as effective. This way it will be perfect for you. I said I'd teach you a style. Well, I changed my mind, and I'm going to help you make your own. Both Kakashi and Sasuke were a little shocked at his words. He was not only willing to let Sasuke use his style, but was going to take the time to rework it just so it would work better for him. Then he said something that made their thought process come to a complete stop and their eyes to go wide. You know, now that I think about it, this could be the perfect style for you. I mean, when you activate your Sharingan, you can process movement better, right? So in theory you could skip the side effects completely, or at least they would be less of a problem. Both their minds went back into overdrive. He was right. When Sasuke's Sharingan activated, this could be the perfect style. It was a powerful style, and the only thing that would be a problem was the after effects. But something was still bugging Sasuke. Why are you doing this? You created a powerful fighting style and now you're doing all this for me. We don't even know each other. Actually, I don't even like you. So why are you doing this? Naruto thought about that for a moment, and when he came up with a good reply he answered, "Because you asked me to. That's it. Because I asked you to. Pretty much. But you're right. We don't know each other that well, and I can tell you don't like me. Not many people do for some reason. But I can tell you are full of pride, and so for you to ask me for help must have been hard for you. And as for why I'm putting in so much effort to help you, well, if you have a strong fighting style then it looks good on me for helping you create it." This made sense to the Uchiha. By teaching him this style, Naruto could say he helped make it. Plus, this is a good lesson for you. When you have your Sharingan, you will be tempted like so many Uchiha before you to rely on it too much. This way it shows you the benefits of hard work. Sasuke didn't know if he should be grateful for the help or angry that he insulted his family. Fortunately, he didn't have to decide. He's right, Sasuke. Turning to his sensei, Sasuke just stared at him, waiting for an explanation. Take it from someone who's fell into that trap already. I became complacent with my skills and relied on the Sharingan too much. It made me arrogant. Because of this I made a mistake that I can never take back. Sasuke didn't see Kakashi looking at Naruto out of the corner of his eye when he said this, but Naruto did. The three of them said nothing for a few minutes, lost in their own thoughts. Kakashi of the past, Sasuke on his family, and Naruto wondering if he could pat his head and rub his belly at the same time. When the moment passed, Naruto stood up and looked down at the two. "Anyway, like I was saying, I will teach you the basics of the style and let you do the rest yourself. But I think you should do something else for the rest of the day. You still look ill, so I'll leave you with Kakashi and go do my own training." Later, he was gone before Kakashi could say anything. Letting out a deep breath, Kakashi turned back to Sasuke. He was still a bit pale, his hair was sickened, and for some reason he was still wearing the rotten fish. "Okay, for the rest of the day we will be doing the tree walking exercise." They didn't see Naruto until it was time to go back to the house. When the blonde came back into the clearing, it was to a tired Sasuke and Kakashi quickly hiding his book behind his back. When they got to the house, they were the last to arrive. As they came into the sitting room, all eyes turned to them, or more specifically, Sasuke. Without saying a word, Shino walked over to Naruto and gave him some money. Confused by the exchange, Sasuke suddenly remembered what Naruto had said earlier about a bet with Shino. Trying to be inconspicuous, Sasuke made his way over to a window and threw the rotten fish into the lake outside, then turned back and glared at Naruto.